said about previously, barefoot, it's not bad or good. It's just an instrument, and the biggest problem that this instrument was
pointed,
was pointed, was against all the people, and barefoot, it's a part of the people also. We need to understand it, and now we have some change. For example, in my region, I think now when I live to a place which connect to the war, it's very influence on people, and people stay more more patriotic and more think about вместе.
Together to unite.
Yes.
What about aesthetical change?
Всегда это kitchen. All afraid of kitchen.
Actually, everything went back to normal, and kitsch took its usual place in our life, I think, because the aesthetics of new power is hardly different from the aesthetic of the old power. But I think our idea was to remind to everyone that you can be somehow caught in your with your strange standards, but I don't think that the lesson was very effective.
I think because everybody has a very particular relationship to what has happened in the last few years, and I think even at this table there are probably different perspectives. It would be good if everybody could answer this very simple question, not about aesthetics, but about culture more broadly, what has changed. So Nikita began, but maybe Roman, you could say something from the perspective of Donetsk, what has changed.
I think I know it exactly. In culture, yes, maybe culture change now because, for example, in my region and in Dnipropetrovsk now, it's some phenomenon. We have a lot of initiative. Yes, now. Yes, and it's art initiative, and it's very strange because we now символовски наш город, и это как бы людям дает толчок постоянно что-то делать.
So in this local initiative, they're actually helping people in their daily life because the situation is very unstable. So these kind of local small maybe initiatives in Dnipropetrovsk, they're actually helping to manage the whole situation in the state.
Thank you. Roman, can you answer the question, what has changed?
Если культура может остановить войну, я пытаюсь найти сюда, когда может остановить войну, скажем так.
So I think that it's not an important question at all. I think the most important question is when the war will stop. And I'm interested in only in that kind of culture that maybe possibly could help us to stop war.
Может быть, я сейчас скажу очень спорную вещь, но мне кажется, что Майдан и война, которая сейчас идет, абсолютно разные вещи, не связаны друг с другом, потому что на Майдане люди были, которые из Донецкой области хотели одного и того же.
I might be a little bit controversial, right? I might say something controversial right now, but I think Maidan and the war that happens now in Donetsk kind of connected at all.
Если, потому что на Майдане были люди из Донецка, я был на Майдане.
Because there are many
те же
people.
люди были на Майдане.
Because there are many people actually in Maidan, on Maidan. There were many people from Donetsk, and I was there, but now in Donetsk region happened something really different, and it's not connected.
Если искусство имело место быть на Майдане, то сейчас искусство абсолютно беспомощно во время войны.
If there was art actually when there was Maidan happening in Kiev, well now it matters that there was art there. But now when we have war in Donetsk, it's not actually a case.
Я думаю, что Майдан и есть просто искусство.
I think the Maidan itself is a kind of piece of art.
Do you want to respond to that?
There are many initiatives now, actually, if we are speaking only like in bureaucratic way about culture, because we have a huge problem in our country that the government doesn't understand the importance of culture for or the humanitarian situation in the country, that the roots of the conflict that is being taking place now on the east of Ukraine is partly the result of absolute ignorance by the authorities of some cultural thing, of education, of just general some spreading some general ideas for the whole people, for all the people who live in Ukraine. And now there are so many initiatives to change the situation. Unfortunately, due to the fact that there is a really severe war happening in the east of Ukraine, not all the officials understand, new officials understand again the importance of culture, and we are really aware of it. We want to change the situation on the official level because it's really important.
Thank you. You are echoing something that Svetlana also said in her introduction, which I found interesting and provocative, which was the proposal that perhaps the separatism would not have taken hold in the same way that it had if culture had been brought to this region. I wanted to ask Roman and Nikita if they agree with this, because Nikita said, I thought very interestingly, that conflict is nothing to do with this. Conflict is about money, territory, other things. And the rest is the information war. So I am interested in the question, is culture just the information war? Is it not possible that these images of the revolutionaries in the Maidan is an information war rather than a cultural manifestation? So this is my provocation.
То, что сейчас происходит, это абсолютно смоделированная ситуация.
What is happening right now is absolutely model situation.
И для этого проекта нужно было время, не знаю, 10 лет или 20 лет.
So for that project, you mean the initial
Да.
For that situation, meaning war, perhaps 10 years or more, maybe it was needed to do that.
Я начиная с 2007 года пытался отвести выставку свою на Западную Украину и найти возможность перевести западное искусство на Восточную Украину.
So I was trying started from 2007, I was trying to do kind of cultural exchange and bring my art from Donetsk to Western Ukraine, and to bring art from Western Ukraine back to Donetsk and Eastern regions to have this kind of cultural connection.
У нас было много возможностей общаться, обмениваться и любить друг друга.
We had possibilities to love each other, to exchange the ideas and to have the connections.
Но этого все равно не происходило.
But it never was happening.
И это было просто сделать.
But actually it was very simple to do that.
И как раз это и доказывает то, что это было как бы вот этот сепаратизм в зародыше, он взращивался.
So that's why the separatism was actually brought, because it was never
контролируемая ситуация.
It was controlled.
И теперь немножко поздно включать искусство как инструмент примирения.
Now it's already too late to include and to turn on this culture or art as an instrument to try to control and to manage the situation. It's a little bit too late already.
Если наши политики перестанут, как сказать, одни говорят, что пока не дойдем до Москвы, а другие говорят, пока не дойдем до Львова.
So one of the politicians say that we're gonna go to Moscow, the others say that we're gonna go to Kyiv.
I think it's a very stupid idea. And after that, when they stop this stupid talk, after that we have a chance to work with children and a new generation, and without war and peaceful generation. But what we can do now with these guys, with aftermaths, with guns, what we can do now? What we can do now? 20 years бездействия, 20 лет бездействия.
20 years there was no action, so it's a little too late.
Никто не занимался культурой.
Nobody was actually caring about culture.
Мы, конечно, сейчас можем говорить о культуре, там еще, но немножко поздно, относительно нашей ситуации. Вот, и меня обидно.
So it's really a shame that it's already a bit too late to start speaking about culture that can manage the situation.
Но культура способна много изменить, и если мы можем...
But culture actually can make some changes, and we can prove it.
But before you said that you're interested in that kind of culture that can stop the war. So what kind of culture? It can stop the war. What kind of culture can stop the war? In your opinion?
В нашем регионе, мне кажется, можно сделать такой проект. В поле поставить длинный стол.
So I think we can, in our region, in Donetsk region, we can bring very, very long table into the field.
Сыграть на большой свадьбе.
And make a wedding there.
Напиться хорошо.
Get drunk.
И подраться.
And go fighting.
И высказать друг другу все.
And say everything face to each other.
И начать заново уважать друг друга.
And start from the beginning, start to build a relationship from the beginning.
Никакие картинки, искусство, песенки, стишки сейчас уже бесполезны.
It's not about art, songs, or culture right now.
И еще very important thing. Stop Christian separatism. Orthodox separatism is very important thing. Yes. If we stop this separatism, we may talk about culture, about different stuff of culture which may stop this war. Because behind the cultural questions we have another kind of problem.
So this was, Nikita, do you want to come back to your idea of information war and this?
I'd like to remind that now culture mission, yes, really, culture now not change situation, it's opponents.
So culture right now cannot actually change the situation in general, but nevertheless,
culture has a mission like therapy for people, and when we have it will be more deeper.
If right now so if we don't have anything right now in kind of culture or art it will be even more depressed and more heavily in an emotional way.
A good idea. My art is about coal miners, but maybe now we must start create art for coal miners, not about coal miners, for coal miners, and that's a kitsch. It was like art for coal miners because all simply poor people look and this beauty, total beauty, and think, wow, it's really cool art, it's a real beauty. So we can change this понятие или все, поменять.
So we can try to change it and to make good, хорошее искусство, kind of good another art for miners.
Можно просто представить хорошее искусство для жителей.
So we should just make it visible and just to show good art and maybe produce good art for miners. Maybe that's the point. Maybe it will change something.
Okay, I think I'm just interested to press you more on this question of two questions about culture. Because the question, can cultural means change anything now, is a different question from the question of is the whole situation, was the crisis in the first place to do with culture? Or was it just a straightforward question of power, politics? Class, for example, class. Is it about class or culture, or at least both?
It's one of the reasons on this. Yes, because one said about it that people who culture is part of
Society.
Yes. Ну, как бы не только часть общества. И, безусловно, культурные люди, их невозможно так легко изменить, они не могут так легко поддаться этому.
So, of course, culture is the part of the society. People who have this cultural experience, and if there is culture in society, it's not so easy then to influence people in such a direct way that it was in the Ukraine before that.
In my opinion, culture is a major issue of this conflict because the lack of some universal, some pan-Ukrainian sayings, some ideas, some even mass culture. We are speaking about it because I seriously doubt about the lesson of anatomy for Dr. Tulip for the coal miners, but I really believe that something like a good soap opera can make a lot in integrating the people, because for many years people have been watching Russian propagandistic soap operas about KGB soldiers, about something like that, and it was absolutely influenced by ideology, and we were blind not to, because we didn't want to notice it. We didn't want to produce our own, because people from art sometimes they think themselves to be too sophisticated to be a part of this mass culture, and people from mass culture they're mainly focusing on money. That's why this produced this lack of local product for mass distribution, and I consider it to be a very serious problem. One of the most serious, in spite of the fact that for sure there is this class issue, there is this power issue, but the ignorance of culture was a very important thing, because there was only one art center. If we are speaking about contemporary art, there was only one important art center in Donetsk, as there was not a single one in Lugansk and in the area, and this art center, Izolyatsia, was ruined during, it was one of the first, I think, to be ruined by separatists, because they hate contemporary culture, and we know from the owners of this Izolyatsia art center that the catalogs of Boris Mikhailov were ruined, and they were like very aggressive towards contemporary art culture. They don't accept it. They consider it to be one of their major enemies. So if they think it to be their major enemy, probably they feel some power behind even contemporary art.
Shall we take a few questions from the audience now?
question to Nikita, Shalenny. Your project about catapult is quite ironic, or I mean symbolic probably. Then the catapult, real catapult, arrived in Maidan 2-3 months after. Do you see yourself a bit like a prophet? You can see, what is coming. It's like a bit serious about proroka.
I think it's not. I'm not prorok. But это известно, что художники они чувствуют время.
Well, it's not particularly me, but it's just it's a basic knowledge that artists can actually, they feel the time and they feel the situation. So it's not actually me being a prophet, it's just artists usually do that.
И иногда ты что-то делаешь, даже не понимаешь почему, а потом.
Sometimes you do something and you don't actually understand why you're doing that, but then you're in a couple of months and you understand why you were doing that.
Maidan united east and west of Ukraine and became catalytic for two maybe different cultures. How divided or united Ukraine is after Maidan, and because of the war which many people in Russia, including Donetsk region, those Russian-speaking, consider as certainly war as a civil war, which is not correct, but they do. So what is your opinion about that?
I think it's artificial situation. It's not civil. It's not civil. Exactly civil war. It's artificial. Yes. Yes, about also about information.
But is society divided hugely on a cultural basis as well and not united, or there is a unity?
For us it's very difficult to judge. I'm speaking only for myself because when you live in Kiev you don't feel this difference. We can just see that there is immense concentration of effort among people who are volunteering for Eastern Ukraine, who are trying to help refugees, who are trying to help the soldiers who don't have anything, any equipment, because our plutocratic government managed to sell everything that the country possessed. So there was no even winter clothes for the soldiers. There were hundreds of thousands of refugees from the region. So making some political statements about whether it's a civil conflict or civil war, I think it's not our task. But yes, for sure we know that there are different opinions and there are people who don't support Ukraine, who don't want to be in Ukraine, in the east of Ukraine. But in Kiev we see this amazing volunteers movement, and for me it's one of the major features of contemporary Ukrainian society, because these are the roots of civil society. This shows us this growth of this amazing growth of civil society elements that was so random in our Ukrainian life before the revolution. I think this is somehow the effect of Maidan. But regarding your question about the civil war, it's very difficult to judge.
Susan, I just wanted to ask you a question about whether you think that maybe also the system of education for art something to do with the situation, because it is really great that we're saying that access to culture is so important, and it's something that could really foster a different sense. And I think we're everywhere. We're kind of fighting for the recognition of the importance for culture. We're doing this country, the politics where that kind of is threatened for education of children in schools. But also I know, having worked with a Ukrainian artist for 20 years and also having stepchildren who are kind of artistically minded and wanting access to the system, it is so limited. In terms of maybe in terms of how you came through the system of becoming artists, your own education. There are very few art colleges. So if you aspire to become a practicing artist, you try and apply and get into a college which is for 14 to 17-year-olds, and that's kind of very specialist schools. And getting into the schools, how many in the country do you have?
One.
3 important ones?
One important and maybe two
less important ones. So already that limits, and the access, you talked about the corruption in the system, so there's already kind of difficulties. I'm sure if you went to these schools, you know it was very difficult to get into, and that was the case whether it was 30 years ago or now. And then from these schools where there's so few students who are trained or have an opportunity to be trained to look at becoming artists, then going to the probably 2 or 3 major academies that we have. So this is a very big system in terms of educating our artists, educating the kind of critics and theoreticians, in terms of validating or kind of fostering a situation in a society that values this and that supports. And you were talking about educating children. I think there is probably a lot to do, and hopefully there's a spirit coming out of this, that this is a major impetus, and once this terrible war is over, and you don't have to kind of just think how to survive in the country of war, but how to kind of make a better place for these for people who want to be artists and who want to talk about culture. And that kind of also will help with people being more in connection to mass culture production, or what happens on television. That's something that we always see is limited. This is something where it's such a fight and such a struggle.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I'm not sure that was a question, but it's a valuable comment.
It was a comment, but also kind of thinking whether this is something you share, or a question of you kind of sharing this, if you think this is the right assessment.
The problem with Ukraine is that even when there are no colleges or no schools that teach contemporary art, well, the system that we were speaking about has nothing to do with contemporary understanding of art. It has something to do with just craft. But it's not bringing you to any knowledge about contemporary art, contemporary culture. The problem with Ukrainian art education is that there is no normal art education in Ukraine in contemporary sense of this word. There are schools that teach mainly craft, and then in those schools they teach people to hate contemporary art because they perceive themselves as some counterpower to contemporary art. That's why mainly today people who go into contemporary art and who manage to make some careers in the contemporary art, they are either from some other specialities, they have some broader education, or it's just by chance that they become artists. For instance, they can be engaged in some street art or some other practices that broaden their experience. For instance, as far as I know, Nikita is an architect, and Roman, he has a background in street art. So that's how they became more contemporary, because it's very difficult for a young artist to find his way in the country that has no concept of contemporary art.
Yeah, and I think that's that kind of enormous effort that you kind of generate, and I think that's so admirable. And also, probably if I could allow to say one other thing, kind of thinking of looking at who of you is coming out, sort of I've experienced the first generation looking at this other generation, how many women are there of these kind of really strong people who are going through this, because as it is already kind of considerably difficult in every other society, that's again could be an interesting thing.
Okay, I think we're going to leave it there just to keep to our schedule. And we now have half-hour coffee break, which is just hold on a minute before you can start packing up. The coffee break is down the staircase and one floor down in seminar room 1, and we're going to begin promptly at 4 p.m.
детально рассказывать. Я хочу интегрироваться в вашу условность. Вообще,
Поэтому я думаю, если это включить в наш...
Вы мне просто прислали, что это было 2 ноября, 3 ноября,
А это давайте есть. А вот это у вас. Да.
Я просто что сделаю, я должна сделать. Вот то, что вы прислали, то, что я вспомнила, составить списком, чтобы вы подумали, что они еще. Тогда уже отдаю.
А на вас еще надо поставить директорию у себя. Так, я тогда оставлю это вам.
seems fine.
If you spend how many thousands on doing up the kitchen, something's fully planned, you don't have to say. I don't think I'm going to go to the Louvre before. And then when you come back to the only one there, isn't there? Yeah. Then when it gets to 5 friends, it's gone.
Please start eating. What was the favorite? I still think it's eating.
a really cool Swedish philosophy study. And I'm doing like volunteering hours and I get free like so a lot. And then dancing Sunday. And then I even know this actually. I don't like the places, but I think it will think of me when you see the selections, because dinner is one of the words that I should say. I have like, I should have that's wine. Just wine. It's like it was so inspiring. It's like, I mean, like, it's not like it should be my work. And then the one just
Why?